Do you think this is the most important stage of the drawing?
In my opinion, it is. I mean, they're all important, but to me, this is usually the sort of line in the sand where you're defining the drawing. It's the make or break phase.
What's the best pencil, Eric?
The best pencil? None of them. They're all varying degrees of awful. Hey everybody, my name is Erik Gist, and I'm here doing a demo at the Proko booth at WonderCon. I do comic book cover illustrations for Marvel and DC and pretty much anyone who wants to pay me to do a comic cover illustration. Okay, so I want to start with the big shape. I always like working big shapes to small shapes. And when I do that, I like to jump right into sort of an envelope or scaffolding shape where I establish everything that's going to be included in the drawing. And for me, the most important part of that isn't accuracy of contour or anything like that. That can be pretty general. What I want is to make sure I get the height to width ratio, making sure that the shape that I draw is the same height and width ratio as whatever it is that I'm drawing, in this case, McKenna. So I'm going to take a quick measurement and see how that width compares to the height. That's looking pretty good. So I took a measurement of the width and it came to about there on the height. Now I want to get the sweep of the neck coming down, looking for some kind of a gesture. I don't like drawing the neck completely straight because it ends up looking like a lollipop or a Pez dispenser, which is not something that we want to strive for here. Include a little bit of the shoulders and find some way to vignette the drawing. I'm going to stick with her collar on her shirt and I'll ignore the lanyard on her badge. So there's our big shape. The next thing I want to do is separate out the hair shape from the face shape, or silhouette 1 and silhouette 2. And again, keep that really general. I'm not looking for individual strands of hair or anything. I'm just looking for sort of a big, general, sort of Lego hair wig shape type of thing. Then I'm going to separate out the left and right side of the face, or the center line. And what I'm doing there is starting to look for some comparative measurement. What's this distance compared to this distance? If it were straight on, that would be equal. If it were profile, it would obviously cease to exist. Everything else is going to be somewhere in between there. Now I'm looking for the brow line, nose line, chin. Up to the top of the forehead, you're going to get perfect thirds, which I am off of that right now. So let's make those adjustments here a little bit. So 1, 2, 3. That's got us pretty close there. And for that, that's going to establish our brow line, or the top of the eyes. If you imagine like sunglasses, it would be the frame on the sunglasses. And I'm going to start looking for some rhythms. I've got a forehead rhythm here, sort of made popular by a guy named Frank Riley, who taught at the Art Students League in the first half of the 20th century. And it's just a way to simply break down the head. I can get in here and establish the placement of the features with these sort of placeholder rhythms without having to worry about drawing an eye. Sweep down to the nose. The base of the nose is going to be on that middle third there. And then again down to the chin. Laugh line rhythm, following around a muscular rhythm for the orbicularis oris. The names aren't really important, but that's what it represents. And then a side plane, 2 side plane rhythms actually. One for the side of the cranium, one for the side of the face. Now adjusting my contour, my big shape, to make it look a little bit more specifically like her. Looking for her specific angles now that I have most everything on the board and in play. Slight bit of an up tilt. From the brow and the nose, it's going to wrap around the head and get that ear placement. That was pretty close. Maybe narrow up that neck just a little bit. She has a long, thin neck, very graceful, so that's part of her character type, so we want to capture that. Look for the placement of the mouth. Usually that part in the lips is going to be about a third of the way from the bottom of the nose to the chin, and then the mentolabial sulcus, that deepest depression, will be another third. That varies quite a bit from person to person, but it's a good place to start. And she looks like she falls pretty well into that. So now look for her mouth type. Nice sort of prototypical Cupid's bow shape to her upper lip. So I'm taking a second to see if there's anything jumping right out at me that I can correct. Each phase of the drawing, that's a good place to sort of pause for a second and be analytical about your drawing and not just push forward. I want to make any changes that I notice. It's certainly not going to be perfect, but if there's anything that jumps right out at me, I want to make those changes now. Maybe it'd be a good time to get in there and be a little more specific with the hair shape. Looking at my spacing and placing, see that everything is on track. It's looking pretty good. Okay, so now I've got the rhythm established. Everything's in play, seems placed pretty well. I'm going to be moving into the 2 value phase of the drawing. Now, those of you who've read books on drawing or taken an academic drawing class, or I'm sure even in a lot of Proko videos, they'll tell you to squint. This is the phase where it's really important. Squint at the model, focus your eyes on your drawing, and try to get a sort of accurate two-value representation of what it is that you're looking at. So that's what I'm gonna do now. I'm gonna squint my eyes down at McKenna, and then I'm gonna look at my board, and I'm gonna start coming in and very generally using the side of my pencil, try to simplify her eye down into a dark shape. The lighting here in the convention center, it's not bad, but it's not ideal. So I'm having to dig a little bit more for those dark shapes. But it's not how I would choose to teach someone to draw, because you want to get them to see those light and dark shapes. And if they're hard to see, it's just that much more of a struggle. But once you get some experience under your belt, it doesn't really matter that much. You'll start to be able to identify the shadows more easily, keeping it very general. Again, like what I see when I squint. Very simple eye shape, and that feels pretty good to me. Everything is relative in drawing, so I won't know how good that eye is until I start getting everything else in there, but it seems pretty reasonable. As the drawing goes on, I get more and more specific. You want to avoid being too specific early on, because you want to give yourself some room to bring it into focus and also make adjustments. If you get really, really specific, your ability to make adjustments is very difficult. If things are general, I can carve into them and add on to them fairly easily. But if I go in there and really outline everything and make it really, really solidified, my tendency will be to want to not change things, because it's very hard to change them.
If somebody wanted to start to draw this way, where do you think would be a good starting place?
They're at a pretty good one right here. I mean, I imagine they're seeing this on the Proko site or on the Proko YouTube. That's a great place to start. Obviously, Watts Atelier would be a big one in my opinion, because, you know, that's where I taught and that's where I learned and that's where Stan learned. And, you know, we're all kind of part of the same art family. So the Andrew Loomis books are a really good place. So that would probably be my biggest recommendation there, would be the Loomis books, Watts Atelier, and Proko.
How do you think these skills have helped you in your illustration career?
Freedom, mostly. I'm not really afraid to draw anything, because I'm relatively confident, or at least as confident as I could be, in my drawing skills. So when I sit down to come up with ideas for covers, I'm not scared off by, oh, I don't know if I can draw that, or I don't know if I can do that. I can really focus on the storytelling and the composition, and maybe, you know, any kind of special effects that might be required, because drawing or painting a head, I'm pretty confident that I can pull that off. I would be very hesitant to do a lot of things I do if I hadn't spent as much time focusing on drawing as I have.
If you want to learn how to paint comic covers from Erik, go to proko.com/Marvel. The full course is a smorgasbord of Marvel artists teaching you their skills in comics.
Her hair is very close in value to her complexion, but I'm gonna push that a little bit darker, because if anything, I do see the hair being a touch darker. But just to get some graphic separation, I'm gonna push it a little bit darker than what I'm seeing up there for now.
Do you think this is the most important stage of the drawing?
In my opinion, it is. I mean, they're all important, but to me, this is usually the sort of line in the sand in a drawing where you can't let anything slide. Up until this point, I'm willing to kind of let things sit a little bit, because you can get caught up in just constantly revising your drawing. And not that you shouldn't pay a lot of attention to that, but up until this point, it's usually to me sort of a, I'm not sure, I think that's right, or I think that's wrong, but I'm gonna put a pin in it and just make a mental note. And then once I get to this phase, I revisit all of those things that I've stuck pins in throughout the course of the drawing to make sure that it's looking right. To me, this is really where you're defining the drawing. You're not gonna be able to make it substantially better or worse after this phase. As you render it, it's just gonna become more of what it already is. So probably a better term rather than the most important, I would say it's the make or break phase of the drawing.
One of the questions a lot of people ask is, should somebody go to art school or not?
I mean, I can speak from my personal experience, and I know that I never would have gotten to where I was without the environment of Watts Atelier. But I think that's somewhat individualistic and also relative to what your goals are. I certainly don't think it's gonna hurt. And if you want to go in any kind of an academic direction, meaning more representational, then yeah, you're definitely gonna want to be in there. And a creative environment with like-minded people is always beneficial. It can be very lonely as an artist because not a lot of people get it. I mean, I don't want to aggrandize artists or what they do, because all things are important. But as an artist, there aren't a lot of people that you can sit and be honest with, because most people don't want to hear honesty. That it's like, look, it's really hard. There's as much academic to it as almost any other field of study. And then what they want to hear is like, it's like, oh yeah, I was just born and I was good at it, and so I'm an artist. That's what I am. The truth is, it's a lot of hard work. And so being in an environment with other people that like doing it as well, and you can sort of share the work with, there's sort of misery loves company type of thing. Although I don't think it's misery, but studying is very, very hard and it can be lonely. So it can be nice to sit down with other artists and be able to commiserate and bounce things off of people who have a shared experience. So now I'm going into that 2 value and starting to bring out a greater value range. So I'm going into my dark shapes and dividing those up into 2 or 3 values. And then I'll go into my light shapes and I'll divide those up into 2 or 3 values so that I end up with, say, a 5 or 6 value drawing, which honestly is usually enough. You don't need many more values than that. I'd say that's one of the biggest mistakes that young artists make is they over-render. Too many values. Focus on the powerful statement, the big statement. And then if you want to bring in more values, if you choose to bring in more values later on in the drawing, then yeah, great. That's your jam. That's what you're into. Detail, rendering, all that. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I'm not criticizing at all. But don't be reliant on it. Have that be a choice of personal expression.
Who are your artist influences?
I mean, obviously Jeff Watts is a huge artistic influence on me. Phil Hale, big artistic influence on me. He was one of the first guys that really made me want to paint. Glenn Orbick, who is actually Jeff's teacher, is also another big influence on me as far as my career and the aesthetic of my work. James Bama is another big one, who turns out was a Riley student, but I was actually a big fan of his work before that. That would be my Mount Rushmore, I guess, would be Jeff, Glenn, Phil Hale, James Bama. For some reason, some crazy person wanted to carve a Mount Rushmore of my artistic influences.
If somebody wants to become an artist, but they're not sure if they want to do it professionally, do you have any thoughts on that?
I would say just work on the fundamentals and develop your skills as broadly and solidly as possible so that once you do decide what you want to do, you've got the skills there to pursue it. I think it's good to have dreams and good to have goals and good to have role models, but don't get locked in too early to what you think your career is going to be, because life changes on you real fast. Like, I didn't even know I wanted to be a painter when I first started school. That's about the only thing that's changed, is that I went from wanting to do comic book pages to wanting to paint comic book covers. That's about the only thing that ever changed, but I developed my skills. I even took painting classes fairly early on at Watts Atelier, even though I didn't know I wanted to be a painter yet, just because I thought it would be a good skill to have. Who knows, maybe I would want to color my own comics. And so that would be a useful skill to have. I just wanted a good broad base to build off of. And Jeff was the same way, actually. For a long time, Jeff tried just about everything under the sun in his 20s as far as art goes. And eventually he, decided that being an easel painter was where he wanted to be. An easel painter and a teacher was that's where his passion was. And so that's what he did. But, he did illustration, he did some concept design, he did inking, he did painting. He tried just everything at one time or another. So that's the way I would recommend approaching. If you're not sure what you want to do, treat it like college. First 2 years, some people don't even declare a major, or if they do, they're not taking a lot of classes in their major. It's mostly general ed. That's one of the things college gets right. Keep a good broad base, and then when you decide what you want to do, you'll be prepared for it. Going in and removing some of those construction lines, I feel like they were aging her a little bit. We got multiple light sources in here, so we've got some crazy highlights going on. So I'm trying to narrow it down to what I think are the best ones.
Do you have any thoughts on keeping on the path? I've heard you say before that it's way more of a long-term thing that you do rather than something you've learned in a couple of years.
Trust the path and those who have walked it before you. That would be my biggest piece of advice to anyone who wants to do anything, is that when someone who does what you want to do gives you advice, you don't have to do everything that they say, but listen. If multiple of them who are where you want to go tell you the same thing, they're not lying to you, so trust them. So discover the path by listening to those who have walked it before you, and then walk that path and just trust that it's going to get you where you need to go. But like, if I read a book by Norman Rockwell and he gives me advice and says, hey, this is what you need to do, I'm going to listen to it. And if I'm not willing to do what he recommends, I need to accept that I'm not going to ever get to where he got to. The guy sacrificed a lot. His kids would open up Christmas presents Christmas morning and he'd go out and work for 8 hours in the studio. Christmas, I'm taking Christmas off. But because of that, I'm probably not gonna get as good as Rockwell. But what I do is I listen to that and I acknowledge that work ethic, and I see how dedicated he was to what he did. And if I want to even approach his greatness, I'm gonna have to sacrifice a lot that other people don't. Realize that when you want to do something difficult, you have to give up a lot of other things. You can have anything you want, but you can't have everything that you want. So, you know, when you have your goals in life, you're gonna have to sacrifice other parts of your life, you know, because I have to spend time in the studio, I have to meet deadlines, I have to make the best product that I can.
What's the best pencil, Eric?
The best pencil? None of them. They're all varying degrees of awful. The ones that I use the most for charcoal drawing, I use the Conte 1710 2B, and I use Wolf Carbons. Those are my two favorites.
Who's the best artist?
Who is the best? Me. If you're talking about just like technical ability, Norman Rockwell. You know, there's nothing the guy couldn't draw or paint or compose. Just so great. If you're talking about portraits, well, then you're going to be getting into John Singer Sargent. You know, murals, Dean Cornwell, someone like that.
Who's the worst artist?
Who is the worst artist? Also me. Just depends on the day. No, there is no worst artist. If you're out there doing it, you're a good artist. The bad artist is the one that's never done it. If you're putting yourself out there and you're making artwork, you're a good artist. Maybe not as good as others, but you're a good artist. No such thing as too much art in the world. So if you're adding to that pile, you're contributing to a noble cause. I think I'm probably closing in on the end of this. It's kind of getting to that point where either I wrap it up or I spend another 2 hours on it.
If you were to have 2 hours to finish it, what were the things you'd tighten in on?
I'd build up the halftones a lot more, but doing that now would just start to create a patchiness that you have to commit to it, because again, it's all relative. You start adding another layer of value, and then you got to add another layer of value, another layer of value. There's no such thing as adding just like one more layer. It ends up being 5 layers. So that would be a lot of it. I might try to push into more of a full value range, which maybe I'll do that in one little area here, sort of create that focal point that we're always chasing. And then as we move away from that focal point, we allow it to become just a little bit less. But yeah, that brings some nice attention to those eyes. So I think I'll go ahead and probably call that done. One last thing, we'll get in there and everyone's favorite part of the drawing, and we'll go ahead and call that done. So thank you, McKenna, for modeling. That was great, a lot of fun. And thanks, Proko, for hosting me. If you want to follow me, you can find me on Instagram under EM Gist. And then I'm always teaching at Watts Atelier, and you can check your local comic store for my comic covers.
You ready to see your comics on the shelf? Learn the skills you need to get there at Proko.com/Marvel.